With the release of Street Fighter 6 just around the corner, and with a new Street Fighter movie reportedly in development, I think that it's worthwhile to take a look back at the franchise. Not in terms of its competitive scene or mechanical development, but rather as an influential media juggernaut, and really take in the breadth of its history and influence. Because if it's anything, Street Fighter is such a juggernaut of influence that you can see it not only in the mainstream of gaming, in various knockoff fighters from Data East and whatnot, but in the periphery, in the obscure corners of the industry, like unlicensed bootleg Chinese games, for instance. But there's not a lot to talk about there aside from, and despite the sheer quantity of examples. I'm not interested in doing the angry gamer shtick, and if I had to describe the games, all I can say is, they're bad. Same goes for Human Killing Machine, a game developed for British microcomputers as a sequel to Street Fighter 2, but the developers couldn't convince Capcom to license the IP to them. These are just examples that show how big a space Street Fighter enjoys in gaming, and even outside of gaming there's a lot of Street Fighter media to enjoy, or at least to gawk at. Everyone knows the So Bad It's Still Pretty Bad movie from 1994 with Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile.
You've lost your balls.
A movie even I was disappointed in as an actual child. Then there's the So Bad I've Never Finished Watching It Street Fighter The Legend of Chun-Li. And there's the laughable American cartoon series.
You've ignored your training, and you've turned against all of your friends. And you're a loser.
The pretty cool animated movie, and the equally cool animated series Street Fighter V. I don't think it's a coincidence that these two are made in Japan. I'm not even going to get into the American comic book series, the first one from Malibu and the second from Udon, let alone all the manga. But then there's the truly mysterious stuff. Stuff like the Brazilian Street Fighter comic book, which is hilariously violent and YouTube unfriendly. And there's also a Hong Kong manhwa, which I haven't read or even seen before. But I'm more of a movie guy anyways, and we're not let down here either, as in 1993, the prolific, to say the least, Hong Kong filmmaker Wong Jing brought us Future Cops, an almost indescribable and incoherent movie that may or may not have started its production with the intention of being an official adaptation before transforming into something completely different because they couldn't secure the rights from Capcom. I say may or may not because I've seen this being claimed on a few old websites, but Wong Jing is one of the most shameless filmmakers in a regional film industry known for shamelessness. I mean, nearly every low-budget kung fu movie from the 70s to the early 80s used the same Morricone film score, and I don't think they ever paid him for it. Something tells me Wong Jing didn't have any intention of licensing the Street Fighter IP, but true to form, that didn't stop him from casting this movie with knockoff versions of Street Fighter's characters. I have to admit that I do like the theory that Wong Jing wanted to, but couldn't convince Capcom to license the IP to him, if only because it would be an amusing parallel to Human Killing Machine. But unlike Human Killing Machine, I actually really like Future Cops. The legally distinct knockoff World Warriors are pretty funny, and not just because they look like cheap cosplay. Even their names are kind of cute. Like naming Guile's counterpart Broom Man and E Honda's counterpart Toyota. I also like how they cast Billy Chow, an actual real-life kickboxer, as their fake Sagat. And it's also funny to see the special moves from the game being recreated in that 90s Hong Kong style. It helps that the tone of the movie is entirely comedic, as I can't pretend to take these recreations seriously. If you're a Street Fighter fan though, I do have to say that this isn't really anything like the games in terms of story or even tone. Future Cops is a comedy. A nonsense comedy of a type that was unique to Hong Kong at the time, just with some knockoff Street Fighter characters shoehorned in because Wong Jing was a fan. In fact, this infamous clip of Jackie Chan comes from City Hunter, which was also a Wong Jing directed movie. And all of that, along with some highly recognizable cameos and equally obscure film references, gives Future Cops a real little kid banging his action figures together vibe to it. I'd still recommend it, if only because you can watch it on YouTube for free, but if you like Hong Kong movies from this era, you're probably going to find something like about it, as it has a really incredible cast, and the style of action here I don't think has ever been replicated. It's fun, it's a good time. If you want to see an attempt to adapt Street Fighter to live action that's a little more direct and somehow even cheaper and more absurd than Future Cops, well, South Korea's got you covered. Unfortunately, I can't really tell you much about this thing as I don't know Korean, and I couldn't find any coverage of it in English, not even on the Street Fighter wiki. What I do know is that the direct-to-video market in South Korea was apparently popping off in the 90s, as were unlicensed adaptations of foreign properties apparently. You've not only got this, but the infamous Korean Dragon Ball, Korean Terminator, and Korean Art of Fighting. It is a curious thing that I'd like to investigate more in the future. But, man, if you thought that Future Cops looked cheap, look at that wig on Ken. And that is a sad-looking Hadouken, but gold star for trying. I will give them credit here for seeming to actually adapt Street Fighter, and for including all of the World Warriors, although I honestly wish they'd left Honda and Zangief out, if only because of their costumes here. Like, thanks. I hate it. Kudos for recreating Balrog's hairline, but not trying to recreate his complexion. Not sure why a similar decision wasn't made for Dalsim. Just, what is even going on with him? This isn't even brown face, it's like a puke green color. He looks like he's sick. I will also give them credit for some of the fight choreography, which is pretty smooth for the most part, and most of the actors are really good in these fight scenes. At least those fight scenes where they're not attempting any sort of special effects. If there's something charming about the way that Future Cops represents the more supernatural aspects of Street Fighter, it's only because it's knowingly silly. I'm unsure if the people who made this knew and just didn't care how ridiculous they look, or if they're being totally sincere. It is a mystery to me. But I will admit that I kind of like this inverted Shoryuken. Capcom should make that part of Dan's moveset. The footage you're watching here is from the first of apparently 16 episodes that were released on VHS, which, I mean, my mind is blown by the thought that there's 16 hours of these actors cosplaying as Street Fighter characters. If you want to watch the first episode, it is also on YouTube, linked in the description. But we can't leave Korea just yet, because there's another direct-to-video Street Fighter adaptation, this one being an animated movie, and this time there is a plot summary available in English thanks to an old Hardcore Gaming 101 blog. That being said, even a plot summary isn't enough to demystify this one either. So, apparently, the Ryu and Ken here aren't even the real Ryu and Ken, they're cosplayers, which is just a bizarre example of self-awareness given what we've previously seen from South Korea. The rest of the characters are the real deal, so to speak, and Chun-Li shows up to take the Ryu and Ken cosplayers to meet her master, who's like a cross between Master Roshi and Dr. Wily from Mega Man. It's weird. Then out of nowhere, we cut to Dalsim and his pet, Blanca, running around some ruins where they uncover Bison, who has some interesting choices made for his design in this movie. So after a few seemingly unconnected digressions from the main plot, fake Ryu and fake Ken are brought to these ruins where they open a portal to a parallel dimension wherein they fight Guile and then Bison, and we all die a little inside while watching it, and after some sequel baiting, it ends with a slideshow and the credits roll. No joke, this is easily my least favorite of the media covered in this video. The character design here is just off-putting, and the constant yelling gets tedious very fast. It's animated about as well as your average cartoon from the era, so I can't say there's much here I find visually interesting. But the thing itself is interesting, and that's what I'd say for everything in this video, even those Chinese bootleg games, and even Human Killing Machine, and especially the Brazilian Street Fighter comic book. To me, it's a testament to just how iconic Street Fighter is that before there was even any sort of established lore, The demand for Street Fighter in narrative form was so hot that people created it themselves and then put it in apparently successful commercial products. And 30 years later, we're still hyped for Street Fighter, or at least for Street Fighter 6, and I think that the series is going to continue to inspire other creatives, as it has from the beginning, no matter how bad the next live-action movie turns out to be. But I thought that these were some interesting examples of Street Fighter curios, and I'd like to know if you have any. Leave me a comment, let me know what you thought of the video, and I'll see you next time.